Greetings, this is Charles Darwin again, and I'm here to talk to you about yet another example of how something that is obvious to us today, obviously backed by scientific evidence, was something that was not quite so obvious in the past, even to very intelligent people. And the example I'm going to use is one that might be the simplest of all for us in our daily familiarity, and that is the sun and the earth. The earth spins, and that explains day and night. It's not that the sun goes across the sky each day, it's that the earth spins. And also the moon goes around the earth, we know that. But then the ancient people, and especially under the influence of the powerful authority of the church in the Middle Ages, proclaimed that the earth does not move, and that everything else in the heavens must be moving around the earth. Now this got to be a little bit cumbersome when they tried to explain it, and because different objects moved at different rates. So you had the outer sphere, which was the fixed stars, as they call them. This is the stars that appear not to move, and you would have to do very careful observations on them for a long time to be able to determine that they do move, but they certainly look like they don't move. But Saturn moves across the sky, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, they all move in different ways across the sky. And so the way this was explained by the ancient scholars was that each one of these things, the fixed stars, each of the planets, the moon, the sun, each had its own sphere. And these spheres moved around the earth, but they moved at different rates. This was a very cumbersome system, especially when astronomers began to notice that the movement of the planets sometimes seemed to reverse themselves temporarily. To do that, they had to come up with something known as epicycles. And even if I understood epicycles, I wouldn't try to explain it to you now. I'm just saying that was a really cumbersome system. And yet, that's what they believed, because they did not accept the possibility that the Earth moved around the sun and that the Earth turned on its axis. Now, when Galileo looked at Jupiter, then what he saw was the moons of Jupiter moving around the planet. And so this told him, it appears that Jupiter has moons that go around it, then that means that it cannot be in its own sphere, unmoving. And so this got him into a lot of trouble because he concluded from this that the Earth moves, and he had to recant his statement. Now, it seems to us that this is simply the negative power of the church stifling scientific inquiry. But I am going to suggest to you that it wasn't so perfectly obvious at first that the Earth moves. And the example I'm going to give you is the moon. The moon goes around the Earth, but the moon does not appear to spin on its own axis the way Jupiter, for instance, would do. So the moon did not spin on its own axis. The same face of the moon is always facing toward us all the time. There's different faces of the moon where there's different amounts of the face that are lit up, but it's always the same face of the moon. And so when somebody would say, well, these objects are moving independently in outer space, they say, try to explain the moon. Why is it that the moon is always facing us the same way? Now today, we can explain that by saying that the moon has been entrapped by Earth's gravity, and so it stopped spinning. And that's obvious to us today, but that had to be figured out. That wasn't something, you can't just look outside and see the Earth moving around the sun. That is something that you have to deduce from evidence that is carefully measured and recorded. And that's the lesson I want to leave with you. It's not that the people of the past were necessarily stupid or that they were dogmatic, although that could have also been true, but people back then just had not drawn the conclusions yet that we do from modern scientific data. This is Charles Darwin Tally Ho.